Hi everybody and welcome back to the Old School RM. I'd like to explain something quite significant to you. By the end of this video, I would like you to understand an important piece of information which I think will help empower you in a hospital setting, whether you're with a loved one or you're on your own. It's a very significant, I feel, significant patient safety development that the NHS has introduced in recent years. And it's called Martha's Rule. And if you've never heard of it, you won't be alone in that. Although it's been out a couple of years or so, it's not been widely publicised or not as publicised as it should be. And that's why I wanted to make this video, to empower families, because there are too many patients losing their lives in our hospitals. And I think if you feel empowered to do something, this will definitely help you. So after more than 30 plus years working as a registered nurse, I've worked in intensive care, accident and emergency. I've worked in lots of different roles, but I've seen a lot of outstanding healthcare delivered every day under really difficult circumstances. Even when the department is overcrowded and stretched beyond capacity, usually on night shifts, people have battled on and done their best. It's a wonder we haven't got more clinical incidents actually, and it's only the dedication of the staff that's prevented that. But I've also seen on occasion where opportunities to recognise deterioration in patients was sadly missed. But today's video isn't about laying blame on anybody. It really isn't, because we all work hard in the NHS and the private sector. It's about understanding why Martha's Rule was introduced and how it works, why it matters, and how you can use it if somebody you love becomes unwell in hospital, and I mean seriously unwell. Because one day, knowing this information could make a real difference to the outcome from recovery from illness or not. So what is Martha's Rule? Who is Martha Mills? In July 2021, 13-year-old Martha Mills was on holiday with her family, having a great time in Wales. She was cycling, like all kids do, and she skidded on sand but fell very heavily onto the handlebars of her bicycle. And at first glance, it didn't appear to be that catastrophic. However, I know, and my colleagues in A&E know, that falls involving handlebars are very well recognised, because they can cause significant internal injuries that are not apparent at the time, particularly to organs such as the pancreas, the liver and the spleen. Now, Martha was admitted to hospital for observation, but over the following days, her condition began to change subtly and slowly. Her parents became increasingly worried, and like many parents, they noticed very subtle changes long before serious symptoms ever revealed themselves or revealed a full picture, which is often what happens with blunt force. Martha became increasingly unwell. She developed a persistent fever. She developed a rash, and I'm presuming that rash was probably septic in origin or DIC. I'm not sure, but that's what it sounds like from the media. Her parents repeatedly raised genuine concerns with the clinical team because they believed their daughter was deteriorating. An independent investigation found that there were several missed opportunities to recognise how seriously ill Martha had become, and more importantly, to escalate her care to the paediatric intensive care unit, and that could have been done a lot earlier. And no family should ever feel that they're not heard or ever experience something like that, I feel anyway. And before we can understand Martha's Rule, we need to understand the underlying themes that were going on. Often it's because people are not heard, and there's the missed opportunity. Reports from the patient, reports from the family can say, I'm not happy, I feel like my grandmother, my mother, my sister, my friend is deteriorating. I can't put my finger on it, but they're not well. And time again, what comes back is, we weren't listened to. That's the one thing that they say. Now, there were missed opportunities to recognise her deterioration and escalate her condition. Sadly, Martha, aged 13, developed overwhelming sepsis and died. Following her death, her parents, Merope Mills and Paul Laity, chose not simply to grieve privately. Instead, they worked hard to campaign tirelessly to make the NHS safer. And their work ultimately led to Martha's Rule. And this young girl's death has already changed how hospitals across England respond when families believe somebody is deteriorating. So Martha's Rule, one of the biggest misconceptions is that this gives patients a second opinion. It's nothing to do with that. It does not give a second opinion, and that's really important to remember. A second opinion is when you get another consultant who is brought in to thoroughly assess, go through tests, maybe add more tests, and give an opinion about a previous doctor's assessment, tests, etc., and whether that diagnosis and any treatment is correct. So it's not that, it's not a second opinion. Martha's Rule does something completely different. It allows patients, relatives and carers to request an urgent independent clinical review when they believe somebody's condition is deteriorating, and their concerns, if they haven't been adequately addressed, they will review and address those concerns. What Martha's Rule isn't, it isn't about making complaints. It isn't about complaining about the food or bypassing the doctors or complaining about waiting in A&E. It's about the patient, purely about the patient. It's another layer of patient safety. And we already have in place patient safety systems, observation charts where you've got your blood pressure, your pulse, your oxygen levels, etc., on a computer system or maybe on paper as well. Early warning scores, which again highlight if there's a problem of deterioration, and the critical care outreach and rapid response teams who are there to be called when Martha's Rule is initiated. So Martha's Rule just adds one more layer by recognising something that an experienced healthcare professional has known for decades. The families notice the subtle signs in their family member before anybody else. And if you're alone in hospital and feeling that you're becoming more unwell or that your symptoms are worse, you feel impending doom, or you feel like you're dying, and that's not to be dramatic, there are patients who say this, you can ask for Martha's Law to be instigated. So why did this become necessary? Well, hospitals today are caring for more patients than ever before with fewer staff. Patients who are high acuity, or in other words, really unwell or have complex medical needs. Many patients are older with complex medical illnesses. People are discharged a lot earlier, and we often find in A&E that we see patients going through that revolving door. They're discharged early and they come back hours later through A&E with the same symptoms again. As people are discharged earlier, it's not like GPs can routinely make a house call. It's in extreme situations that GPs do that. It's not the routine house calls that we in the service that we want to remember. Safe staffing numbers, especially for skilled and experienced staff, are low. The overwhelming majority of NHS staff provide excellent care under very difficult circumstances. And by that I mean one registered nurse in A&E can be caring for 6 to 8 patients on their own, maybe a healthcare assistant or student to help if they're available. However, the reality is that nurses often care for more patients today than we did 2, 3, 4 generations ago. Families may spend many hours or continuous hours sitting beside their loved one, and they will notice those small changes, the significant changes, before any of us. Dad isn't speaking as much. My auntie is becoming more confused. And someone who was drinking fluids and passing urine every 4 hours or so isn't doing either, and they're looking worse. And those kind of observations as a registered nurse, they matter. I need to know these kind of things. And normally I would notice that myself. So families who know what is normal for their loved ones are recognised by Martha's Rule. Martha's Rule formally recognises those observations. So how does it work in practice? Well, if you are worried about someone in hospital, and it doesn't matter whether that's A&E or a ward, the first step you do is, number one, speak to the nurse caring for the patient, because each RN will have a number of patients to care for. Number two, clearly explain what you've noticed and be clear on this. Make notes if you need to, if it helps you, because it can be intimidating or feel that way, but just clearly explain. Three, insist on a blood test being done. It's called a venous blood gas, and note the measurement on that gas called a lactate. Now, a nurse might tell you, we did one of those when Mrs. X came in at 9 p.m. It might now be 1 o'clock in the morning and this patient is deteriorating. Insist on a second VBG, a second one. If you're still concerned, ask to speak to the nurse in charge and tell them the same things. If any concerns remain or somebody hasn't got back to you within 20-30 minutes, ask to speak to the doctor responsible for the patient's care as well. Yeah, keep a note. Number 6, insist on this venous blood gas because it is a quick test. Some blood's taken, put in a machine in A&E and ICU if it hasn't been done when you first asked for it. Ask about that lactate level, and does the doctor feel any other blood tests are needed, specialist blood tests? Because abdominal injuries, especially blunt force trauma, need repeat blood tests or a set of new ones if those abdominal bloods were not taken in A&E, for example. That's just one example. Number 7, only if you genuinely believe deterioration is continuing and your concerns haven't been addressed in a reasonable amount of time, I'd say an hour, 2 at a push, from your first request, then you activate Martha's Rule. If that patient is really deteriorating and you're very worried, do it after 10-15 minutes. Instigate the rule if no one's got back to you. Every participating NHS and private hospital has a dedicated escalation process. This can be a phone number, a direct extension. You can even dial the hospital on your mobile and speak to switchboard and say, I'm in A&E or Ward X. I'd like Martha's Rule implemented, please. And an experienced clinician from the critical care outreach team will then carry out an independent assessment. And the assessment is an opportunity to ensure that this deterioration, if there is one, that nothing's been missed. So together with the result of the venous blood gas or VBG lactate result, we'll often speed things up or it'll be normal and everything's okay. But that's important to know, those 7 points and the VBG lactate. Now I'd like to share my own professional opinion, and it's my interpretation after 35 years as a registered nurse. I think Martha's Rule is an excellent patient safety initiative, particularly in these current times, and I fully support patients and families having a way to escalate their concerns. Relatives and patients ideally should be updated about their loved one's progress at least once, during a shift, but definitely following a doctor's review and/or a ward round. But I believe it reflects a wider challenge facing today's NHS. Throughout much of my career, I've experienced nurses at the bedside caring for and observing patients. Nurses in charge would go to every patient on the ward and discuss the patient's condition with them, informing them of what's going on. Recognising deterioration was one of our core clinical responsibilities, and today many wards and emergency departments are operating under such intense staffing pressures that they don't have the time to do this anymore. Families increasingly find themselves becoming another pair of eyes, and that's not a criticism of individual nurses or doctors. Most of us are working hard and juggling at least 10 things at once, if not more. And that's not an exaggeration, by the way. That's how it is. At least 10 things going on at one time. My concern is for the wider system within the NHS, like not addressing staffing levels. This is preposterous in 2026. So as an RGN, our families have always been of value to us as doctors and nurses because they yield great information that we need in order to make diagnoses, order tests, or understand something we didn't know before. But I don't believe families or friends should ever feel responsible for providing that clinical surveillance role just because services are stretched and we don't have enough staff. I think it's reasonable for people to agree or disagree with that opinion. It's an open forum and I welcome that discussion. But I believe it's an important opinion to have as a nurse, and it opens up the debate about needing more qualified and appropriately skilled RNs. So the government has now announced that Martha's Rule is going to be extended into maternity services now as well. And I'll make a separate video about that because it's such a big topic, especially after what's happened in maternity services and the current outcomes of the investigations into poor maternity care. I think this is a really significant response as it follows repeated independent maternity investigations, including those led by senior midwife Donna Ockenden and by Baroness Amos. Women in labour who are pregnant, who are bedridden because of threatened birth, often recognise instinctively when something going on with them doesn't feel right. They know if their baby's movements change or reduce, or when a pain occurs and feels abnormal, or others during birth or caesarean section have a feeling of impending doom, i.e. this feeling like you're dying. They know when something isn't adding up and they need to be listened to. And Martha's Rule gives the women and their families and their husbands and partners another route to request an urgent review if those concerns remain unresolved. It doesn't replace speaking to your nurse, your midwife, your obstetric team first, but it provides another safe layer to review you and your situation clinically if you or your family feel you are deteriorating. The VBG, or venous blood gas lactate test for a mother and her baby can be requested if baby's unwell, and it's a valid test to ask for. Often when a woman is in labour, a baby will have a fetal scalp electrode applied and fetal blood sampling is done for the same reasons, to look at the lactate, which shows whether the cells in the body are working or not. Do they have enough oxygen? Are you becoming acidic? It yields a lot of information of VBG. So one lesson that stayed with me throughout my nursing career, thinking about of what I've just spoken about, is how families, friends and partners are not outsiders. They're a very essential adjunct to the healthcare team. The nurses, the doctors and their expertise, again with the family's unique understanding of the person they've brought into hospital. When they're all together, when everybody's together and listened to, working together for the benefit of the patient, and that's assuming the patient's unable to fully communicate, because normally you would bring the patient in on that, the care is safer because everybody's talking and listening to one another. Martha's Rule is not about blame or confrontation. It exists now to ensure genuine concerns receive appropriate clinical attention. So if you ever believe somebody you love is becoming seriously unwell or behaving in a way that you're not happy with, or not going to the toilet as often to pass urine, feels hot, etc., etc., trust your instincts and follow the 7 steps I've outlined in this video. As a family member, you should never feel powerless. Whether or not you agree with every opinion that I've shared today? I don't know, but I think we can all agree on one thing, that anything that improves patient safety and enables families to feel heard and listened to. Every healthcare professional deserves to work in a hospital that has safe staffing, training, and the resources needed to care for patients properly. The best care is the safest care. And as professionals, we should be able to execute our professional role in a safe manner without reliance on families. Let families do what they do best, helping the patient, being with the patient. And I'd say the Department of Health, the government, hospital executives, including the chief executive and all their team, have to review safe staffing and look at the skill mixes on wards and in high acuity departments like A&E, intensive care, labour ward, paediatric A&E, etc, etc. So if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, because I'd like these messages to get out to other members of the public about the NHS and about care and how you can feel empowered. Same with my professional colleagues. Jump in the comments, tell me what you think. And I'm going to upload a free sheet that you can use in hospital. You can print it off or put it on your phone. Thank you for watching. Join me next time for Martha's Rule Part 2, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.